What shaped my path into getting into real estate in the first place?
Yes.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think now, looking back now, I honestly gotta say that it's like God put it in my path for a purpose and a reason. And when I look back now, I just see how everything lined up and how I got exposed to it without having any exposure to it prior to. But I think my skill set just lended to the real estate industry. Just coming from a dad and a mom that were both hustlers, kinda, you know. I already have a hustler mentality in me, so I was very entrepreneurial from early, and but more in a street sense, you know. And then now, when I grow older and I get exposed to real estate, and it's kind of like a similar hustle. Like you're moving, you're selling, you're dealing with people. You got to get something, and you got to get people into it, and you got to help them through it, and stuff like that. I think that is what lent to me making that transition to real estate. But I gotta give God credit, because God definitely gets all the glory as far as the exposure to it and the way He set it up for me to even get introduced to it. That's a good question. Um, yes, and probably in a lot of other areas as well. I think that what communication did for me at William Patterson, that exposure to communications, what that did was that gave me this broad picture of communications, which I think back to my public speaking class, which helped me which helped me in my career with doing speaking engagements and stuff like that, which did help my career. I think back to shooting projects for television production and film production, which now help me shoot my videos for social media. I feel like the communications part of knowing, learning how to write communication wise with the intro, the main body, and the conclusion, and using that in my videos, and using that in my presentations and stuff like that with dealing with homeowners. So I think it did help me. It did transition. Now that I look at it, my life communications background did help me a lot in my career. Well, the funny story with that is, I ended up going to college from Passaic, and I didn't really know, what major to get, right? So it kept asking, "What major are you? What major are you?" So I'm like, "I don't know what major I am." So I said, "You know what? I know one thing. I know I want to run a business. I know I want to do business. I want to have businesses or whatever." I didn't even know to what extent. So I said, "You know what? I guess I'll be a business major." So when they started declaring what major you were, after I started getting asked to so many times, I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm gonna be a business major." So I never forget, one day I'm in class, and that was my freshman year, and the professor says, "Okay, so what majors are you guys like?" So showing hands, how many business majors? And the whole class raised their hand. And I looked around, I said, "Oh man, I gotta change majors." I said, "I can't be in the same major with everybody else." So I said, "I gotta see what other majors there are." So I started looking around, poking around with other majors. So I said, "You know what? I like psychology." I said, "I like the mind. I like the way of thinking." I said, "I think psychology might be better for me than business, right?" I said, "Because I can always do business, right?" So I said, "You know what? Let me go to that." So I switched to psychology. It took one class. I went into general psych. After I took general psych, I was like, "Nah, psych ain't for me." It's a little bit deeper than I thought. It was in other angles that I never even imagined when I thought of psychology. It was way different. So I said, "No, that's not it." So then from there is when I stumbled across communications. And then communications is very vast. right? Because in communications, you have film, you have television production, you have broadcasting, you have public speaking, you have presentation writing, you have branding, you have public relations, you have all. It's like a real big umbrella. So I said, you know what? I think I like that because if anything, I could maneuver with that. So what I naturally gravitated to was film production. I wanted to be a filmmaker. But then coming from Passaic and being very low on resources, I would say, I quickly figured out that it was pretty expensive to be in a film class because you had to buy the rolls of film, and they were like $8 a clip per roll, and then you had to keep shooting, and then you need the people to shoot with. So I shot my first 2 or 3 projects. I shot it on my block with all my friends. And real quick, I figured out, I'm like, yo, I cannot continue to ask these guys to keep shooting. So I'm going to have to do something else because there's no way between the money for the film and then having the bodies, it didn't work out that well. So I ended up switching it to television production, which that worked out better because most of the stuff that was shot in studio, which was in school, which meant I had my classmates to be the other part, which made it better because then I was part of their production, they were part of mine, and we got our work done, and I didn't have to rely on my friends. And you know what? I was looking around for that footage. To be honest with you, I think I might have lost it, but it's crazy because I shot the movie. I actually made a movie called Love's Gonna Get You, and it was like off of a spin-off off of the Careless One song. And I had Chill C was one of the stars in the movie. He was the drug dealer in the movie, and Frank was the guy who was looking up to him, saying what he wanted to do. So Frank was actually the star of the movie, and I got a lot of help from the block though. Yeah, I think that's something that you really have to overcome. I think that the fear is real as far as people do fear failing when buying a home. They just think of the worst. They think of a house that's going to be a lemon, that's going to just be, terrible, or just constantly fixing it, or just, I think people just think the worst of the worst when they think of that. But what you have to realize is, just like anything else in life, any big leap is going to take some courage. It's going to take some persevering, right? And you realize that anything that you do that takes courage and perseverance, majority of the time, it pays off. And real estate has shown for the last 100 years that real estate has been consistent in one factor, and it's that it's been beneficial to anyone who's dabbled in it, anyone who's gotten into it, as long as you did it the right way. And I think a lot of people focus on the right way or the wrong way. So to clarify right way and wrong way, you can't handle real estate. Let me rephrase that. If you handle real estate, or you handle a stock, or you handle any investment, and you handle it wrong, meaning you get it and then something happens in your life and you have to get rid of it right away, of course it's going to be way different. You're not going to get the same benefits and the same things as something that you held on to and maintained and managed and kept it to at a later time. So real estate, like a stock, like other investment vehicles, I'm sure, the longer you hold them, the more the value goes up on them, and the more you benefit from it. So I think the quest is overcoming the fear, persevering in the struggle to buy it, acquire it, hold on to it, maintain it for years, and then see what you can do with it, either borrowing from it or selling it so that you can elevate, right? Because it's what real estate really does for people like us. See, real estate is used in two forms, right? If you're really rich, People love it because it's a great tax write-off to all the taxes that they have to pay. So they'll pay a lot less taxes by just owning this asset. Mind you, the asset's appreciating and they're getting stuff from it. If you're not rich, it helps you because it helps you progress. It should help you cut your living costs down, right? In some cases, your living cost does go up. But when your living cost goes up, your living style goes up, and then also from that asset will go up, and usually you'll benefit a lot more from the asset increasing in value. So investor wise, you know what? To be honest with you, I think that there's something to be said about you having the courage to jump into something. Right, and then kind of figuring it out after you jump into it. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of parts of life. I think that a lot of times analysis for paralysis comes up where you're analyzing so much that you get paralyzed, right? And you don't really do or take any action. That always comes into play. The other part is that the longer and the more that you don't jump into something, the more fear grows, right? So now you got those things against you. So for me, I look back and I say, wow, I'm so glad that I jumped on my first house when I did. Now, I guess like anything else, one thing I have learned over time in my life is the wisdom of knowing that you kind of have to realize that jumping into something like that, like an asset, like real estate, the fact that I told myself, I guess what I really want to say is having a why, right? Having a why now, I realize how strong that is, because having a why is really what gets you through anything that could have been negative or difficult or challenging. So for me, my why for buying a house and investing in real estate was because I had just come off some layoffs in the music business. And I told myself, I'm like, I don't want to ever be put in this position again where I'm laid off and I'm completely open. You know what I mean? So I said to myself, if I haven't, because when I came into real estate, I didn't come into real estate to sell. I didn't come into real estate to become an agent. That's not what my quest was. All I wanted to do was just buy 2 or 3 houses so that I could secure myself. So in case anything happened with my employment, I had that to fall back on. So it was more like a backup plan. So that was my why. So for me, jumping into it, I just wanted something that I could make some monies from every month, and that's something that I just kept bubbling in the background. My senior year, my junior year or my senior year? My junior year or my senior year, I started interning. I want to say it was my senior year. I started interning because I said, if I'm going to go into the workforce next year, I'm going to need to have some experience, and I need to meet some people that are already in that industry so I can have a leg up. So I started looking for an internship. The internship that I ended up getting was an internship with King Vision, which was AKA a television broadcast company that hosted Inside Edition and at the time the Rolando Watts show, right? So they were like a production company that shot those shows. My cousin worked as a PA doing audio and video for that production company. He got me an internship in that company. So when I started working there, I fell in love. I was like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. And don't forget, I was already studying television production in school. I was getting my degree in television production. So I thought it was harmonic that it was like, oh wow, what a beautiful song that I get to study this in school and I get to do this for a living. And then, going out and doing the interviews for Inside Edition, which were incredible. I mean, incredible. When I look back at that time period, I'm still in awe of what happened at that time period. I mean, we would go there. I want to say like 7 in the morning. We had to be in there, and for a young college kid, 7 in the morning is early as heck. So I remember we used to have to go into New York, meet up with the crew, and then from there they would dispatch us. We had several crews, and then it would dispatch us and team us up, and so you would know what team you were on. And then the interesting part was you got these sheets which told you who you were going to be interviewing. So you didn't know. In Inside Edition, if anybody knows anything about Inside Edition, I mean, they get like the best interviews. I mean, they interview everybody, right? So mind you, one day, a week there, it was like it was crazy. It was like star-studded, right? So one day we could be interviewing Robin Williams, God rest his soul. The next day we're ambushing Michael Jackson, which we never caught. We never they were to ambush him. The next day we're interviewing Donald Trump. The next day, some other breaking story. So it was like every day was like a different thing. We were either interviewing somebody in a hotel room, or we were ambushing somebody to get some footage of them coming in or out of somewhere, right? So it was so interesting. And then a lot of the time we would sit around in the van waiting on people, and we'd be listening to that's where I got introduced to Howard Stern, his show. Because all the crews, they all listen to that while you're waiting for the people to come. So I remember that's one of the most memorable parts of it, was us sitting in the truck waiting to ambush somebody or whatever, or waiting for the next interview while we listened to Howard Stern and talked and stuff. And it was great because I would help set up the camera, I would set up all the lights, I would set up the audio. And it was kind of cool. And then once they shot, then you just chilled out and watched the interview. So that was that part of life. It was very interesting. I mean, if I had to think back to albums, I guess a lot of KRS stuff comes to mind from back then. Then if you're talking college time, then I'm thinking Illmatic, and then Biggie album. And Wu-Tang, those albums, I don't know, they hit different in when when in life they was. But when I think of it, I think back like high school and all that. I think like Nice and Smooth Hip Hop Junkies. I just think of the harmonizing with the rapping, with it's like harmonic. It's like a beautiful song. When I think of that, and I think of like Premier's beats back then, along with Gangstar's with Guru's voice. But yeah, I think that it's just so much hip hop that I've been exposed to. I mean, when you start thinking about when I started listening to hip hop and when I got exposed to it, I mean, Grandmaster Flash and them. I mean, that was like the beginning. I remember my mother used to buy records, and I remember one of the first 2 records she ever bought me was Grandmaster Flash, The Message, and then she bought me Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. Those are the 2 records that I remember. Then from there we would start buying 45s. But yeah, I think The Message, it's like a jungle sometimes, makes me wonder how I see them going under. It's like I think if I had to have a theme song or something of my life, I think it's that. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes you wonder how whatever going under or whatever. So it's like, I know that I was raised in the jungle. I know I was raised pretty much in the street, right? And it was like, what you gonna do about that? Because I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted a good life. I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to be regular. I didn't want to live average. I knew that. So everything I did, I think I made moves towards that direction. Oh man, that's a great question. I think honestly, one of my superpowers and one of my biggest components for me living the life I live today, I think has almost everything to do with my ability of visualization. See, right now I'm a firm believer that you are what you think about, and what you think about and dream comes to reality. And I can just speak for myself. Um, as a youngster, I always pictured me having abundance, me having, all sorts of things in my life. But I think if now as I'm thinking about that topic, you know, God rest her soul, my mom did a great job of like spoiling me and giving me everything. So I had everything, right? So I had this abundance of stuff growing up. Like we grew up poor, but I wasn't poor, right? And I didn't know it at the time, but I had everything, and I had access to everything, and my mom kind of made it that way. And so in my mind, I had these visions, and I don't know why. It's crazy. A lot of the visions that I had have almost all come to life. I visualized living in a house, a big house. The only part that didn't come through on that is I always pictured a white picket fence for some reason in my vision. I don't have a white picket fence, right? I did get the house. I always pictured being married before children, and I think that was like one of those driving forces around me that I kept seeing everybody fall victim to children outside of wedlock and being young. And I think that a lot of people were just having babies with their girlfriend, and I was like so adamant that wasn't gonna happen to me. I just did not want that to happen to me for whatever reason, right? That was my vision, my visualization, and I always associated. That's back to the why. I always associated, for whatever reason, right or wrong, which right now I look back and it wasn't wrong, but at the time I thought it was that my life would end or just be in deep trouble if I got a child out of wedlock, because of the fact that now I couldn't go pursue my dreams. I had to stop and invest and raise this person, and it would take me away from growing and fulfilling my dreams or my goals or whatever, right? So when I look at that, right, and I look at the visualization that I had, I remember often dating girls and talking to them about serious stuff, like, I want to be married, I want 2 kids, I want to live like this, I want to take my kids to school every day, I want them to go to private school. Like, these are thoughts of mine that I had as a young guy, as a youngster. Like, nobody else was thinking, and no one else in my circle was thinking or talking or mentioning any of this stuff. And it was in my head. Now, I didn't know how I was going to get to it. What I thought I was going to become a comedian. And I thought that I was going to be able to travel the world as a comedian. And that I would have these shows and stuff. And I often visualized being a comedian, going into a state, and I don't know if this came about later in my visualization, but I visualized in my head many times me going into a state, getting invited to come in and do a show, doing a show, taking the show money, and then while I'm there, going and looking at property, putting down a down payment on a piece of property, and then coming back to close it on my own, closing the deal. And then now all the monies that got made from the rent from that property just gets thrown into an account. It's just left there. And then when I got called again, it's almost like it went back around again. So now when I got called again to come to that state, I went to that state, did my show, and then I didn't have to go in my pocket to get the money. It was like this visualization of me going to the ATM, taking out money from money that was sitting there. This visualization, I don't know where it came from. I don't know what what even stemmed that. I don't know what gave that life. But these were thoughts in my mind. These were visions in my mind. And most of that stuff came to life, except the whole comedian part, and except the whole turn, going around the country part, which I still think that's going to happen later in my life in a different form. So I think that we underestimate the power of visualization and the power of thinking of what you want in your life. Like I said, I pictured having a wife, a house, children, a career, houses, all this stuff that I have now. I visualized it without even knowing.
Peace family, looking to take your brand, artistry, or business to the next level? At V2G Multimedia, we specialize in creating digital biographies, stunning, interactive PDF flipbooks designed to showcase your story, services, or products in a professional and unforgettable way. But that's not all. When you work with us, your biography gets a permanent feature on our affiliate platform, the Biosphere, where it gains ongoing visibility as our community continues to grow. Ready to elevate your presence and connect with a broader audience? Visit v2gmultimedia.com for updates and consultations on how we can bring your story to life. Now, back to the video.
And they say that's what we should be doing. We should be visualizing the results and the life that we want, and the desires of your heart. You should be visualizing the desires of your heart, and that you should be visualizing them to a T, to the point of like the little minusculest thing in that visualization. Like you should be looking at it like very particularly hot. And they say add emotion to that visualization, how you will feel at that time, how that make you feel, good or bad or whatever. That feeling and that notion that, and then this thing that says to you, yes, I can get that, like this positivity about the faith that that can come true. Man, I think it's helped me a lot. It's helped me tremendously in the fact that you see, the thing is, I kind of created this guy, right? So right now I'm a complete creation of I'm a manifestation of the creation in my mind that I created with this guy, right? So a lot of me has to do with faith, because I had the faith that I would have a family. Number one, I had a faith in the fact that I would get married and then create a family, which is not where we come from. Very, very, like, I wouldn't say very, very difficult, but very, very seldom seen, right? That you actually get to do what I did. Like I got to go to college. I got to graduate. I got to work in my profession. I got to switch my profession. I got to start a new profession. I got to have years in that profession. Then I got married. Then I had children, right? Where if you see that story, how we grew up and the people that we're surrounded with, children came way early in that story, right? A lot of people didn't go to college, so they had kids between the time of high school and college. They have kids of that time period in their life, right? So that right now, most of them have a 30-year-old. I don't. I have a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old as my oldest, right? And me being in my 50s. So that right there was the part that I had faith that was going to work out. That part of it, right? That I had faith in that. Then the other part to that I didn't imagine or I didn't even foresee was the fact that I was able to bring faith, or the faith of Christ, to my family, right? So I got my wife saved. From my wife getting saved, now we were able to manifest a situation where my children are born into the faith, right? There's not like a choice, or it's not like an add-on, or it's not like a plus. It is they're actually born into it, right? Which the word says, train them in a way, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. And even if they do, they'll come back. So that's the faith that we have in that. But that faith has carried over into my business, because I have faith that my business will be well, which it always has, thank God. And then people see my faith in my family and in my life playing a role of how it allows you to tap into the servant part of you, right? The servant's heart, right? I think that we don't get enough exposure, or we don't get enough knowledge in the area of us. When you become a husband or a wife and you become a mother or a father, there's this heavy servant part to that a lot of times is not spoken about, is not emphasized, and a lot of times you're not prepared for it. You don't. It's like dabbled in, right? But you kind of have to give up a lot of yourself for them, right? For the notion of raising these children, of training these children, of your wife, of being a part of her life, and of being a part of raising the children. So that part of it. Then the other part of it is, you know how much it took a lot of faith for me to believe in myself, for me to continue to run my business on commission. Like, it's a whole different world when you live by commission. It's like you really putting your faith in God's hands, because you pretty much don't make anything until something happens, right? And the average person can't live with the notion that they can work all week, work all month, and you got nothing, right? So I think a lot of people are like, no, I got to get something. So it's almost like that's why a lot of people can't work by commission, because they have to get paid to show up, right? Which that right there in itself takes so much faith, because everything that you're doing your whole life is based on your performance and how well you do that, how well you close. And the world is very unforgiving, because you only benefit if everything works out. If everything goes through the closing. And there's so many things that can go wrong or go on to prevent that closing from happening. I always relate it to like a birth. You don't realize how many things go into a birth until that birth is yours and that child is yours that's coming to birth. You realize how everything in the belly got to go right, how everything got to go right in those 9 months, and then everything has to go right at the delivery day for this person to get delivered, to get brought into this world and manifest itself in this world. So I think a lot of it takes faith, and I think that my faith has taken me far. No, I mean that's my philosophy. That's my theory, is that you have to come from a perspective of service first, right? And you have to come from a perspective of giving first for you to get, right? I think a lot of people come from the perspective of what am I getting in every situation that they're in, right? So it's me, and what do I get? And then I look at what I need to do to get that, and then I kind of fulfill that. I come from the perspective of like, look, I learned a long time ago that in business, if you help enough people, you will get helped. That will trickle down to you at some point. So my whole career, I've always put myself in a position where I'll serve the public, and at some point I'll get served, and it's worked for me. You know, I have been able to serve, I don't know how many countless families in their quest to wanting to get that first house that they never thought they could get, or that third house that they never thought they could get. I was able to help people buy that giant building that they never thought they could get, or help them buy multiple properties and get very rich, like several people that I've done that for now, up till now. So when you look at it from that perspective of what you have to do to serve, I know that the world says, oh no, I don't want to be in that position. You want to be in this position. And that to be honest with you, that whole topic can be wrapped up in one thing: Jesus Christ. Everybody thought, in the world would have thought, oh, Jesus Christ is going to come in. He's going to be this giant king, this ruling king with all this power that he could do. He could do anything. He could eliminate people. He could help people. He could heal people. He could do everything. So he should come in this king form. but he came in a servant form, in a regular person, a carpenter that was just a regular dude that just had those miraculous powers. He never abused those powers. He never took those powers, let those powers go to his head. He never, took it to an extent where he overdid it or nothing like that, right? So he took the servant role. And look what he did. He served, and look, he touched the world. To this day, we're saying his name. He's been around. He's been gone for all this time from the earth, and we're still talking about this guy like he was here yesterday, right? So when you look at that, and that's the person that I look up to. That's my creator is who I image myself now after. And when you look at that, he took a servant's role, I had a servant heart, and it got him to where he had to be, where now he's the king of the world or whatever. So in that same form, I feel like it's really affected my business in such a way, because that's where the referrals come from, right? That's where the repeat business comes from. Is serving people, right? That's where the trust comes from, where people know and they can trust me because they know he's been faithful and he's been serving, and he served people, and he served a lot of people for a long time, and he's still serving people. And I think that role is underutilized and not looked at in that way. It's almost like you're saying everyone wants to be the king, but if you study the word, or if you study anything constructive and positive, it always says make yourself the least, and then you'll be the best, as opposed to you thinking you're the best and then you end up being the least. I'm saying, like anything else in life, is owning for everyone, which is, I'll tell you flat out, it's not. But there's nothing that's for everyone. No, I don't think God made anything in this world that's for everyone, right? I think he made a whole bunch of things. So the whole idea with that is that you got to understand your desires, and you got to understand the vehicles that God that are provided in this world, and the resources that are there. So, for example, let's just say that you have this woman, and this woman is in her 40s. She never had children. She has like a boyfriend on and off, but she doesn't have like a long-term relationship. And she says to herself, and she's been renting out this apartment for years, and now they're selling that place. So now she got to move, and she's gonna get displaced, right? So now she's saying to herself, "Dad, do I buy? Or do I rent? Renting is expensive, right? I got to come up with all this down. I got to come up with all this money with the realtor fee, the first month and a half rent, security, all this stuff. Well, how much is it to buy?" So then she looks and she says, "Okay, to buy is going to be this much." And she goes, "Well, I don't really have that, so I guess I got to rent." And in one sense, she's right. She has to rent because of the circumstances. But in another sense, is what are her desires? What is her vision? What is back to visualization, right? So if part of her vision is like, well, I don't want to retire with not enough money, then yeah, you keep renting, and maybe you buy an investment property. So then that investment property, you don't live in it. You still stay where you are. Now that investment property makes you X amount of dollars, right? But what you're really banking on, you're banking on the equity. Because now you hold that, now you're in your 40s, you hold that property to retirement time at 65. You hold it for, 15, 20 years. Now that property elevated a lot in value. You collected from it all those years. And then now when it counts and you're retiring, you want to, let's say now you want to move to another state, a warmer climate or something, you have something to cash in on. But if you never did that, then you're not going to have anything to cash in at the end. So it's almost like the message that I want to send out there is that at the end of the day, real estate is used like the way the parables in the Bible, right? There's seed, and there's harvest, and there's the field. If you're not planting, if you're not going to use your seeds, to plant these out to get a harvest in the future, then you can't be upset in the future when you have no harvest because you didn't plant anything. Part of planting is planning, thinking, visualizing, preparing, right? Another part of it is your desires. What do you want? And you have to always look at and think of the future. I think that's one of my superpowers. So obviously, I don't want to throw it around like it's something simple and easy, because to me it is, right? Because my superpower is thinking and always planning and looking ahead. And I think that for me it's worked, right? Because the fact that I've planned and looked ahead was the reason that I even got into real estate, because I was planning, looking ahead, saying this is what's going to happen to me. Then I get into real estate and I plan and look ahead and say, oh, I want to have a long career. And I've had a long career, right? I've seen in my time, I've seen a lot of people come in and out and dabble in real estate, and real estate got hot and they were in real estate and real estate went down and they left and went and did something else a little easier, a little faster. So you got those things always in motion. You got those things always going on. So it's like at the end of the day, it's like for you, what are your desires? What do you really want to do? Because then the other flip side is to it, okay, so can I rent and use that other disposable income that I would have been using on my home to fix it or renovate, update it? Do I use that to take trips with? Do I use that to invest in the stock? Do I use that to buy mutual funds? So what else am I doing in replacement of, or am I using the real estate as a vehicle? Real estate is only a vehicle. It's an asset, and the thing about that vehicle is that the reason people love it is because it covers every asset class, right? You're talking about equity, you're talking about cash flow, you're talking about being able to leverage it, being able to borrow against it. And I think that that's the parts that our community don't get. Our community only sees it one-sided. You own, you get it, and that's it, and then you get to sell it or whatever. But there's so many other aspects of it. You know, if you're a young person and you're listening to this interview and you're, 23, 24, and you think it's, now the 23, 24-year-old is thinking way ahead more than the 23 or 24-year-old when I grew up, right? Just so you understand, when I started selling real estate 25 years ago, it was I wouldn't even say seldom. It was like not seen like at all that a person in their 20s and 30s were buying a piece of property. They just weren't. They weren't. That's not where their mind was at that time. But you got to understand also that at that time period, rent was very low and comfortable, right? So at that time, $600 to $900 was like that sweet spot to rent something, right? So who didn't have $600 to $900 a month to rent? So you really didn't care too much about the house, right? About owning. I think that came about later once you started realizing, whoa, $22,000, $2,400, $2,500, $2,800, $3,000 to rent. Now you're looking at it like, oh, okay, hold up. So I think that was a big difference there. But also, see, my thing is, when you do whatever you do when you're young, when you're looking ahead, right? That's what you're gonna get later. If you don't do anything, you're gonna pay for it later, right? Why do you think you see a lot of people right now having to do what they have to do? You walk into any retail store, walk into Walmart, walk into Target, you're gonna see a lot of people working there that are overqualified, that they're doing what they have to do, right? Why? Because when they had a chance to do what they were supposed to do, they for whatever reason, no knock on them, but they weren't able to do it. So now, because of that, pay me now, pay me later, you're gonna pay. You know what I mean? So I think that right there, that topic right there is a soft spot for me with my community, because I see a lot of that tragedy coming, right? Because a lot of people just didn't prepare, right? A lot of people just haven't dabbled, they haven't invested well, they have, just spend, create, and then which leads me back to one of my other topics that I want to cover, and I want to make sure I cover this. As a community, I have this part of me that doesn't sit well with the fact that our community, for whatever reason, doesn't focus on the high income lifestyle, right? We don't do enough to qualify for a high enough income. That's why we're always scratching and scrapping and downsizing. And so what I've noticed as a common thing, our community is way faster at retracting than they are expanding. What does that mean? The average person in our community is quicker to say, let's lower this, than to say, let's add on this. They won't say, hey, you know what? I'm tired of being this. I'm going to take this course on Saturdays and Sundays that's going to get me this certification, which I don't have to do this anymore. I'm going to do this now, and this is going to pay me way more than this was paying me. And then now I'm leveraging that so I can make more income so that I can have more to do more. Instead, what people say is, I'm gonna change my cell phone carrier and save money there. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. And they're reducing instead of adding and going this way, right? And then going with faith. So I think that part right there is the one part. The other part is that I know growing up, like, none of us love to learn because the way we were taught wasn't conducive to our behaviors and environments. So we weren't, a lot of us back then probably had ADHD and we didn't even know it, right? But it wasn't diagnosed. It's like, yo, just sit down and you got to learn. These guys are learning, you're not learning. And then, a lot of us didn't like to learn. But now you have to grow up and you have to know, learning is a key thing. Like, you have to learn. And I noticed that the people in the most difficult situations, in the most difficult positions, are the people that are less willing to want to take a course, to want to do more, to want to do something else. Like, they're not stepping outside of their comfort zone. They're not happy where they are, but they also are not willing to do anything about it except complain. And last I checked, complaining doesn't change your environment. It doesn't change your income flow. It doesn't change your joy. It really doesn't. And what does is actions, and actions taken in the right places. And I think one of my superpowers is that my whole life I've been willing to learn. I've been willing to take on the responsibility of learning something and then applying that and then doing that. Thank God that I went to college. Now, mind you, to this day, no one's ever asked me to give them my college degree in order to qualify for what I've done for a living. Nobody, right? So right there, I'm thinking to myself, wow, even if I didn't have it, I would have been okay, right? But I think the swagger and the confidence it gives that you did complete that. What it did show me, which I learned a long time ago, was what college really does for you. It doesn't mean you're smart or you're smarter than anybody else or anything. All it does is just show that you're trainable. That I can give you things for 4 years to accomplish in deadlines, projects, reading, assignments, and you'll get them all done. And 4 years later, you handled every assignment, everything, and you got a certain grade that you passed in all these areas. And all that shows that you're trainable. That's it. So if you're trainable, now you got to continually training yourself. So I think that a lot of people need to wake up to the notion that, look, there's classes for everything, especially now with the digital age. But even, and if you're not good with, I'm not good learning digitally, then there's classes in person. And if, I don't like being in person in the class, then there's digital, right? So there's something for everyone. And I think that one of the things that people should really be doing is doing your homework and trying to improve yourself so that you have skills that give you a better income. Because that's one thing that I saw. I saw that, okay, I want to become a real estate investor, but in between investing, if I got a skill to sell and I could sell a home and I could make a commission while I'm investing, that to me made sense because of the high leverage of what I was doing. So it's just looking for a high leverage situation and something that will improve and better yourself. So if you're thinking about buying an investment property, right? Then what I want you to be mindful is preparing for the process. What it's going to take preparation wise to be ready to do it, right? So speaking with a professional, getting all the insights of where and how this takes place. So most people already know that anytime you're going to go to a lender to get a loan for real estate property, there's qualifications for that. And the way you qualify is through two different pillars that they kind of use to qualify you, right? The first one is your credit score. What your credit score does is it allows the bank to figure out the risk of the transaction. At what risk is this at? So basically, the higher score you own with your credit and how you've been able to handle your credit since you got it will give you a score. That score assigns a risk factor to the lender. The higher the score, the lower the risk factor. The lower the score, the higher the risk, of course, right? So you got that part, the credit part. Then you got what the most important part, which is your income to debt ratio. I make $30,000 a year and I spend $28,000. So I really got $2,000 left over in my account in the year that's not accounted for. As an example, that $2,000, that's your buying power. That's what the bank is going to look at, your buying power. They're not going to look at the 30. They're going to look at the 2, right? So realizing that, right? Knowing that there's a buying power that I have, knowing that there's a credit part to it. So then now what you got to be the tip that I would give you is, okay, start knowing that. Okay, what is my credit score? Right? What let me look at my credit report. What's on there? Oh my God, I got something there from 2004 where I didn't pay PSE&G when I moved from my last place, and that's still on there. Oh my God, I got my son's emergency room bill that we never covered that's on there, that's late. Oh my God, I got this, I got that. So then now you start cleaning that up, and just a little bit of cleanup there brings your scores up. So now you bring your scores up to the right place where you're low risk. So now if you're low risk, it's going to cost you less because you're low risk. So I'll give you that tip. The other tip is if you don't have a good paying job, then you might want to figure out who else you want to put on the loan that has another job. So now you get it. Now you do it by numbers as opposed to one number, right? And then that will help you qualify. There's ways to handle that. We'll talk to a professional, talk to other people, lenders, and then there's ways for that person to be on and then be off of your loan. So you'll be able to get them on, use their income, and then they'd be able to get off and they'd be able to do it themselves. Because I know the notion is, well, if I put them on my house, they feel like they're not going to be available and ready for their house. So that's one of the ways. That's one of the ways to do it. The other thing is that one big tip that I'll tell you that a lot of people just don't talk about, and that just really gets to me a lot, is that too many people looking to do something in real estate are just talking to too many of the wrong people. Like you can't talk about any topic to anybody and expect them to give you the right answer. Like the answer that you need, like the real answer. They're going to give you an answer, but that's their answer. That's their perspective. That's what they've heard. That's what they've seen. And then to be honest with you, we really attain negative information way better than we do positive information. So right away, our brains are built for survival. So we're going to see what is detrimental clearer than we're going to see what is positive. So with that notion, the tip there is that you're listening to people that have no credibility because they're giving you stories that were negative that they heard of, that they're holding on to, and they're passing those stories on to you. And now you're taking that in saying, you know what, they're right. What if this happens? So now you're coming in, back to our talk from the very beginning, now you're coming in with fear. And now when you come into the market with fear, you're looking at it with a totally different set of eyes, right? You're looking at it with a fearful set of eyes, not a positive, optimistic, faithful set of eyes. You're looking at it with what if I get jerked? What if this house is a lemon? What if it costs too much? What if I lose my house? What if I can't afford it? What if I go to foreclosure? Like all these things that all of us could go through, right? But the thing is, no different. The analogy I like to use when it comes to this situation is almost like being a parent, right? If you were a parent, you're going to be a parent, and then you start asking around and telling people, "Hey, I'm about to be a father." They're going to give you all sorts of stuff that are negative over positive from being a dad, right? Your son could be this, your daughter could be this could happen, that could happen, and now you're going into fatherhood, right, with that notion in mind, right? But if you had the positivity and you had set up your life where you had a wife and you had a wedding, and now you guys are both professional, and now you guys have set up the nest, and you guys went and got a house or an apartment, and you got the backing of the family, now you're in position with the process to raise this person, to bring this person out. It's the same thing with buying a property. If you're going to go and prepare yourself and have the situation set and have a spouse and you do it together, or you have a brother, or you have, family members and you group them together and say, come on, we're going to buy this house. We probably can't buy it alone, but we can buy it together. Then now your strategy is in place and now you can work the plan. See, I think a lot of times we're expecting to get things without a strategy, without a plan. We just want to do it. I just want a house. I just want to get it. I just want one because I see that rent is too much. I've been dying to buy a house, but I haven't been able to. Things just don't work. The thought of that is like another analogy that I'll give you. The thought of that is like saying, I want to have I want to be a photographer. I want to have a photo. I want to have a business shooting people videos and shooting stills. And you just want to do it. You didn't train for it. You didn't prepare for it. You didn't get a good camera. You didn't do nothing. But you just want to do it. That the thought of that, an analogy of you wanting to do a business, or you wanting to be a realtor, or you wanting to be a fireman, you want to be a plumber, whatever you want to be, there's process and procedure to going to do that. There's preparation involved. There's certifications involved. There's courses. So it's the same thing with this. This is a big deal. You're buying a house that is an asset that you can touch and feel, and it goes up in value, and it's valuable in so many ways. People need to live. People are having more and more. There's more. The population is growing fast. And let me tell you, it's only going to be worth more because of supply and demand. The dirt in the land, it's here. There ain't going to be no much reproduction of dirt and land. Only infrastructure is going up. And if you got one of those plots, or you got one of those lands and the infrastructure could go up on it, you're going to benefit. If you don't, you're going to have to pay. And let me tell you, from what I've seen from the beginning of time, and I still see it today, the lower on the income pole you are, the worse your conditions, the worse your rights, the worse your access. Everything lessens the lower on the totem pole you are income-wise. That's why I keep saying, why don't we as a community stand up and try to aim and go for higher paying income careers? Why are we not shifting? Why are we not switching? Why are we not leaving that job that we've been at for 10 years into something better? Why, I don't know, is it fear? Is it lack of? I mean, you can get the skills now. Is it time? Is it desire? Like, what is it? that people aren't changing the course of their lives by what they're doing for income wise. So the tip I would say is, number one, work on your income. Number two, if that's an issue, then do it by collaboration, getting more people involved. Number three, know the process. Know that your credit matters. Know that your income matters. Know that you have to save money, right? And then people, and that's the other biggie right now, right, in our communities. Well, how am I supposed to save up a down payment where I'm not making enough money to even pay my bills and save? That's back again. That's why I keep saying it's an income issue that we're having. We have to make a little bit more income. If you have more month than money, it's a money issue. You have to take care of the money issue before you take care of anything else. Now, if you got more money than month, now it's just an allocation, because that's the other part of it I want to talk about to people, is that a lot of times too, it ain't the money that we're making too. A lot of times it's how we're using that money. Like, we're so quick to be consumers and we're so slow to be investors. That's a huge issue that's not talked about that much, because I know it's not sexy. I know people don't want to go into that because it's like, oh yeah, I know. But how are you going to show me that you're a grown adult and you have a great closet, you have beautiful clothes and nice shoes and a nice bag, or you got dope gear, you got a watch and you got gold, but you don't have a stock, you don't have a piece of real estate, you don't have a mutual fund, you don't have life insurance. Like, you have none of these things that matter, but then you got a whole bunch of material items that depreciate in value, that after a while you don't use. It just sits around and it's of no value at all. Like, to me, that I cringe at that. I cringe when I see people on Facebook or whatever and they're showing off their new gear or whatever. I have no interest in dope gear. I've never owned a Gucci belt for $300. I've never, or $500, or whatever it costs. I've never owned Gucci sneakers for $500 or Yeezys, or nothing that crazy that I need to own over trying to have my money in my account. So when an asset comes out that I can buy it, or having life insurance, or having a stock, or having a mutual fund. Like, to me, those are the things that I'd rather put my money in that. Now, money that comes from that, now I'll buy stuff, but I'm still not buying anything like real expensive at any notion. I think that's one of our things, is that our expenditure, like how we're spending. I mean, look, see, this is the crazy part. Look at our community, right? And you drive around any project, drive around any project housing thing, right? And what will you see in the driveway? I mean, in a driveway. What will you see in the parking lot of any of those housing places, right? Dope cars, right? Which, look, I ain't knocking. You want a dope Audi, you want a dope, whatever. You want a dope Benz, whatever you want to get, no problem. I get that, right? But understand what housing was created for. Housing was created so you could have a low overhead, so you can get on your feet, so you can save your money, so you can go do what you got to go do. But people use that as, oh, instead of me going to get my own place, I'm going to go stay with my mother, get my car, a dope car, and stay here, and then now be under the radar and not have that bill. I don't have my own PSE&G. I don't have my own rent. I just be in a room and, in and out. Yeah, that works for a while, but then it catches up to you. Because now midlife crisis comes, and then now you're scrambling around like, yo, what the heck am I going to do now? Because you don't own anything. Now, if you would have gone there to, now if you flip it the other way, and you would have bought an average car, and you would have took the difference and saved it, and then you would have stayed at mom's crib and took the difference that you would have been paying on rent or whatever and saved that, and now you putting that away in investments. Doesn't have to be real estate. In investments, and you put it away, and then now fast forward 3 to 5 years or whatever, a few years, and it's starting to bubble, and you got 20 over here and 30 over there, and then now you decide, you know what, I'm gonna bounce from mom's crib, I got a little cushion, and I'm gonna start a little business. right? So now I'm gonna take 25 of that. Maybe you get a friend. Maybe they got money together. You sit, you put it together. Maybe you buy a crib together. Maybe you buy a business together. But it gotta be some sort of investment. There has to be some form of asset allocation. You have to get assets. So now that we know this, that's the biggest tip. Whatever way you want to cut it, the biggest tip is that you have to get assets. You have to start collecting them as early as possible so that as you get older, they're growing with you and you're not depending on your salary, on your check, on your paycheck, on your money that you're earning. Your money's working for you. But if you're busy spending it and giving it to the mall and giving it to the car dealership and giving it to stores and giving it to Amazon, then you're not going to have any of it to put it to work for you. And if you're not putting it to work, then you're going to have to work. And if you're going to have to work, then you're going to have to work till deep in your career, in your life, which that's why today you see a lot of people in their 50s and 60s working at retail stores because they have to. Now, if you're okay with that, and that's what you have to do, then more respect, respect to you. That's what you want to do. But if you really want to be well off and you want to see how the people that are well off end up getting there, is a lot of them do it through asset allocation and they do it through sacrifice and they cut back. And if you notice, look at anybody with any kind of money, they don't have expensive stuff. And if they do, it's because they got it later in their life and they treat themselves after all the stuff that they passed on. But I see way too many people that don't have that kind of money and have these kind of material things that really are invaluable, to be honest with you, about people in life. Man, I mean, phew, it's taught me. I mean, I'll be honest with you, being exposed to real estate for the last 25 years, it's like being in a life university that is just on a whole nother level, because you get to see so many different ways of life, and then you get to see so many different people, the way they handle their lives, the way they handle their real estate. I mean, I've seen everything from people fighting over their parents, over a family member that passed away that left them a house, and people fighting over the equity on this house. And not being prepared and all that. I've seen that from my next door neighbor, who, God rest her soul, she was so prepared. And she only had one son. Prepared everything, had her paperwork ready, had everything ready. She left him this house next door to me. I mean, I want to say he must have made, $600,000-$700,000 from that sale that his mother left him. And something like that, when you see that, you see the legacy, you see the inheritance, right? That makes a difference, right? Because now that person was already doing well. He already had a good career. He already got a wife. He already got a life, right? He already got his own house. And then you add $600,000 to his net worth in one shot. That boosts him. I don't know what he's done with it or not, but that boosts you. That puts you in a whole nother category, right? So then you see people. I've met people that, I mean, I had a guy who, his strategy was, he was kind of a single dude, like, relationships and stuff like that, but wasn't married. So what he would do is he would find a dope crib and that he had to remodel. He would buy it, move into it, remodel it it would take him like 2 years to totally remodel it. 2 to 3 years he would sell the house. And the loophole there is that if you live in a crib for 2 years, when you live in your house that you own or occupy for 2 years or two years plus straight, when you sell that house, the Clinton administration put in this clause years ago in the tax law that if you're single, you don't get taxed. You could make up to $250,000 profit and you don't get taxed one penny. If you're a couple, you could sell that house and make $500,000 profit and not get taxed a penny, right? So what he does, and a lot of other people do that I learned, is that they'll live in the property for 2 to 3 years, then sell it at a profit. If they make 100, 200, that's all clean, untaxed money. They take that money and take a portion, put it on the next house, live there for 2 years, and then now, in a way, they've made $100,000, $200,000 profit from living in their house. They didn't go work for it. They didn't do anything. They just lived in their house, and they got that. So you learn stuff like that. You learn that some people have so much money that they just have a whole bunch of properties just for tax purposes, so they can say, oh, I did the deck, I did this, I did that, and that's all write-offs. So they don't have to pay taxes on that money. They could have either sent that money to Uncle Sam because they make so much money. So Uncle Sam's like, oh, you owe us $150,000. Let's just say. But let's just say they spent 75 or 100 on fixing all their houses. You got the tabs for that. You throw that in there. Now that money that you would have sent to Uncle Sam went to your house, which made your houses better, and you got a write-off on it. So it's those loopholes like that you get to learn and see. And then you have stuff where I've seen families that were struggling. Let me take that back. Not that they were struggling, but they were just average families, right? And they were renting and stuff. And then they just said, hey, we want to buy a house. And then they end up buying a house. They end up buying a multifamily dwelling. And then they end up living in the property, paying less than they were paying in rent. And one trick I taught them was make believe you're still paying the rent that you was paying before, but pay it to yourself. So put that in an account, like just make believe it doesn't exist. So pay that whole amount into your account, leave it there, and let that mount up as you're paying the bills to the house because the tenants are paying the mortgage for you, and then your money that you would have been contributing towards, you just put it into an account. Anything or whatever happened with the house, you got that account, but on top of it, you're gonna have a good amount of savings in case you want to buy a next house in a few years, right? So I've seen them go from being a regular Joe with a regular job. I've seen them advance their jobs over the years. I've seen them have this house. I've seen this house help them save in advance. Then they've come to me and say, we want to buy another one in a few years. I've seen them buy another one. I've seen them have that one where in some instances they moved and went there to a better place or more room or just a better location. Other instances, I've had them stay at this house, get that one, completely rent it out, make cash flow off of that one. And then years later, have them call me and say, now we want our single family, right? And then now they leave this one, rent this one out. This one makes them a profit. That one makes them a profit. And they go live in their single. And in their single, the overage of these two pay for that one, and they live free. So now what I've seen is that was a perfect job to leverage real estate. And what I've noticed is the difference that real estate makes in people's lives is that the people that use it right, I wouldn't even say the intelligent people, I would just say the people that do it right, they leverage real estate to their life and their advantage, where other people just don't, because they're looking at real estate in a negative way. And they're not realizing all the leverage that it brings you, right? Where if you leverage it, you use that leverage to your advantage, guess what? It propels you, it excels you. Look, I personally wouldn't be living the lifestyle that I'm living today if it wasn't for real estate, if it wasn't for the ability for me to be able to leverage real estate. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, I built my first house ever in real estate, and that property, I was able to build it because I was able to refinance houses that I've owned for years. If I don't buy those houses years ago, I don't have anything to refinance. I couldn't have came out my pocket to get that money. That was a lot of money to come up with. I think I had to come up with like, 80,000 plus. Like, you don't have that just sitting around in your pocket, in your account. So the fact that I was able to leverage that property allowed me to build that. Now, from building that, I got that property, and now I leveraged it into another property, which I'm about to build, but that helps from there. Now, on top of that, I want to now do other projects. I'm digging development. So guess what? I'm about to sell another house. I'm about to now sell a house of mine, get that and get that gain, and take that and put that into development. So now I could keep developing in it. But moral of the story, if I don't have that to leverage, I can't do these moves. And I think a lot of us are looking, when you're looking at real estate and property and stuff like that, you're looking at the minimal part. You're looking at today. You're looking at right now. You're looking at next year. You're not looking at the long haul of this. You're not looking at it as a whole. You're not looking at it as if you're in your 40s and you buy a property and you give yourself to your 60s and you got that property is what's going to help you, propel you, and leverage you into retirement world, right? Now, why do you think now some people are going to grow older? You're not going to have anything to leverage, right? The government's going to say to you, well, okay, we're out of Social Security. We finished. There's no more Social Security. It's done because everyone cashed in on it, right? So it's gone. And then they're going to say to you, okay, now you got medications. You need somewhere to live. You may need a caretaker. If you have no leverage, no money, no nothing, I don't understand. I don't know how people are going to handle that part. I don't know if the government's going to step in on all those people or not. I don't know. But I know that one thing I'm looking at is, God willing, he gives me the next 10, 20 years to be alive. My focus is to try my best to accumulate and try to take what I got and pretty much hustle my way through to getting more stuff, so that way when I get towards the end of my life, not only do I have things to sustain me as far as leverage, if I needed to be in housing or senior housing, or if I needed a caretaker, or if I needed an operation or anything like that, that I got that to fall back on to help me with that, right? And then on top of that, like, what am I leaving? You know what I'm saying? If all this time I'm here and I really didn't acquire anything, and I was so scared I didn't buy nothing, and then my kids get older and I got grandkids, and you don't got nothing to leave them. To me, I'm like, wow, what did I really do if I'm not leaving them with anything? Because at least I leave them with a leg up. You know what I mean? That no matter what it is, even if I left them one house, even if I left them the house I lived in, right? But I hope to God I'm gonna leave a lot more than that. But even if I just left that, it's something that I could pass on to the next generation, number one. And then number two, is something that I can have, deeper in my retirement. Because the last thing I'll say with this is, one thing that we're not understanding too as a community is two things. One is knowing the value of something, right? Because we're so quick to devalue. Let's just say, I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of us come from Passaic, right? And we think Passaic was hood. Passaic still considered hood. I don't know now. It's gotten a lot better. It's still a lot of urban stuff going on in there, but we devalued even the properties that were there. We had no idea. Today, people are paying top dollar for a house in Passaic, right? Now, mind you, had we had the notion that back those years we would have helped our family and helped ourselves and bought a bunch of real estate, we would be the beneficiaries of our community going to where it is, right? But we're not, right? So that's part. The other part is that people get so wrapped up and gun-ho on where you're buying this at, right? So I'm not buying it over there. That place is trash. That place is this. Look what they have said about Patterson. Look what they've said about Newark. Look what they've said about Jersey City. Look what they've said about Hoboken. Look what they've said about Harlem. Look what they've said about Williamsburg. Look what they've said about Brooklyn. Though I name you all those areas because all those areas are being gentrified, right before our eyes, and we had a chance to get all those places at a discount, and we all passed, right? Well, not all of us, but a lot of people passed, right? So that's the part of it. You have to know your value. You have to know the value, because it's almost like taking a chip that you don't really like and then being able to cash that chip in for a chip you really like. But if you don't get this chip, you can't get the chip you really like. Because, and a lot of times, that's another lesson that I've learned in real estate, is that the way people do it. I've seen people where they've bought a crib in a certain place that they weren't really that fond of, lived there for a few years, got the equity, sold the house, traded that chip in for a better location, stayed there for a little while, traded that chip in for a better location, and kept improving their life and their location, and now they're where they want to be. That's the one part. The other part is that we completely underestimate, and it's prevalent today, but I've been talking about this for a long, long time. The notion that if you don't anchor down and buy a place and you continue to get by, if you think you're getting by and you're renting because you're not owning, what happens is it catches up to you. Because look at now, right? The beauty about buying a house and living in it is that your bills stay there. They only increase but so much over the years. If you're a renter, right? You're a renter, and let's say you were renting a few years ago, you were renting a 2-bedroom. A few short years ago, you could find a 2-bedroom at $1,500, $1,600. If you were forced to move, or you decided to move or whatever, and you fast forward to now, you're talking 2000. It just jumped up $500 to $600 a month, which is a big dent in your economy, right? But the flip side is you spend all the money up front or whatever to buy this house, but then now going forward for the next whatever years, you're fixed at that income. You know when that hit me? One day, I used to go to LA Fitness, and I used to have a group of people that we used to take classes together, and we started hanging out. We go hang out at one of the guys' place that was from the gym. He had a beautiful lakefront property. The back of his yard was to the lake. He had a nice boat. He had a couple boats and beautiful yard, beautiful home. And I remember being in his crib, and I said, bro, this is a nice house, man. And he was like, yeah, thank you. He was like, I bought it many years ago because I couldn't afford it today. And when he said that, that's when it hit me, right? A lot of us think that people that got these cribs and everything, they bought them now. A lot of them know they bought them early, and then they live them out, because if they were to buy them now, they couldn't afford them. Their lifestyle, their job was not growing up, it's not increasing like that. See, we're not told this. So for us, we're thinking, oh yeah, we're renting, we're doing this. I'm living where I want. I don't want to live over there. I want to live over here. So you're living over here, paying a premium where you could have lived over there for a year or two, got the benefits of living there. Instead of you thinking of the negatives, you got the benefits, which is the equity. You take the equity, now you put it over here, now you live over here. But no, we want to live over here from the beginning. We don't want to live over there. So now, because you don't want to do that, now this part is harder. You got to save up more. You got to pay more. You got to work harder for that, as opposed to you have letting that happen and leveraged it. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying for you to live somewhere where it's completely, dangerous and you don't like it there. I'm talking about a place you would take, but in between, not here, not down there, but like over here maybe, right? And you have to be the one that chooses that. It's still your choice. You're still able to select the house that you wanted. All I'm saying is you can't select this one from the beginning. That's all. You can select anything over there. And it's almost the same thing. The funny part is we do that so simply when it comes to retail. Ladies, let me speak to you ladies real quick. If you knew that it was your turn and you said, okay, I'm going to go buy me a Louis bag, right? You said, yeah, I haven't bought a Louis bag. I've been dying for a Louis bag. I want to go buy me that little clutch Louis bag. And you went to the store, the Louis. And then you started talking to the rep, and the rep said, oh, these clutch over here, these are $2,300. Oh, how about that one? Oh, that one's $7,500. Okay, I think I'm more over here. You know to stay over here with your $3,500. You know damn well you ain't got no business being over in the $7,500 range, because that's not where you want to be. It's the same thing with a house. It's the same thing. The house over here, they cost more. It's a different area. It's a different thing. You know you don't need to be there. Get the little Louis. Get the little house. Get the house in uptown Passaic. Not in the Passaic Park, not downtown, but in the middle there somewhere. Get that one. I know you don't want to be in Passaic. I know you want to get out of Passaic. Stay there for 2 or 3 more. The funny part is sometimes you end up staying there renting anyway for a while longer than you thought. Just own there for a little while. Look, the great part is if you can't take it, you own the house. You can always move out into a better area, leave the house there producing for you, and it's an asset that you picked up. And then now you just rent, because I have a lot of people like that too. They're in New York. They're in a great apartment, beautiful, big New York apartment. And they have a decent rent because they've been there for so long. And look, they don't want to leave and come to New Jersey to live in it, but they do want a house because they're thinking ahead. So now they're coming over here. They're buying a house. They're saying, we're not going to live in it. They have it. 3-4 years pass by. You know how many people have done that in the last few years? Between 2018 and today, I can't even tell you how many people I've sold houses to that 2 or 3, 4 years later, their house went up $100, $200, $300, and they've sold their houses already, and they made that $200 or $300, and they've gone on and went and did whatever they want to go and do with that money. But if they never would have did the process to begin with, they never would have had that money. That's why I don't understand, because if we're not rich and we don't come from a whole bunch of money, we gotta leverage. We gotta figure out how do we get the money without having to work that crazy for it. So that is what I would say to you, that from real estate, the countless lessons, the countless exposure to knowing how to use equity, to knowing how to use location, to knowing that you could bring up a property in value, to knowing that there's help and assistance when a house needs fixing, to knowing that you don't only judge a house by how it looks, but you judge it by the potential of it. You judge it by where it's at. You judge it by what the size is, what's in it inside, what it can produce. Because look, right now, if you look at a house, what it can produce, what you really want to look at in a house is how many units can I get in there? How much space can I rent in there? Does it have parking? Does it have garages? How much money can I get from renting the garages? And then now with the new laws, now with ADUs, which is additional dwelling units inside of a home, now the government is trying to help out with home ownership that's getting difficult. So they're saying, look, we'll allow you to have an ADU, which means, let's say, for example, you own a house and you have a 2-car garage. And let's say you use that one of the garages. You could take the other garage and turn it into an ADU. You go down to City Hall, you get permission, permits. They let you renovate the garage. You make a studio apartment. So now let's just say, just for rough numbers, don't take these numbers seriously, just for rough numbers. Let's just say you spent $15,000 fixing the garage, putting a studio in the garage, and now you rent that apartment for $1,500. $1,500 times 12 is well over $12,000, probably over darn near $15,000. You're gonna get your investment back in a year. After that, it's just pure profit, and on top of that, the equity jump in your property, because now you have another unit and it's fixed and it's generating money for the house. You bring your equity up, which means you can borrow more from your house because your house is worth more. So see, it's little things like that you end up learning and seeing, and you end up finding ways around things instead of talking your way out or persuading your way out or getting talked out of it from other negative people's talk of not owning real estate, of not owning a home, not owning where you live, not taking care of knocking off your most biggest expense, which is the housing. If you could knock that down or knock that off, that is the key to everything in real estate, is what I've learned, is the leverage and knocking off the expenses and gaining the equity leverage that you get from the position.